everyone.
Welcome to the Scottish Liberty Podcast, and you are listening to episode 159. Don't be confused when you're hearing the soft and sultry sounds of a Southern lady. You're in the right place. So I'm here co-hosting with Mr. Antony Sammeroff. This is Sherry Voluntary, in case you don't know.
Co-pilot, Earth Calling Pilot's co-pilot. So, we have an extra special show for them, don't we, Sherry?
Of course. It's always extra special when I'm here.
Okay. But I meant largely in reference.
You mean the
conceited.
guest.
Oh, yeah, the guest. We almost forgot about the guest.
You guys just take it away.
We have a very special guest. Special. So special indeed that I needed a stunning co-host to meet his special needs. In order for
Controversial.
You make me sound like the caregiver of a special needs child or something.
I need care.
I didn't say anything. I left it subtle in order for people to make their own judgment. I didn't slap people in the face with the comic undertones. But you guys can just keep on calling out my humor for the rest of the show and explain away my jokes. Jonathan Sammeroff, the fantastic Jono, half of the I don't even know how to genreify your studio-based electronic music.
This dub reggae production duo.
The dub reggae production duo Zanza. And also you've got quite a lot of your own solo music on the internet as well. Where can people find that?
On the interweb, go to meandmyguitar.com. Most of the links are on there, or search for my most popular song, Still Stuck in the City. Search for John Stuck in the City in Spotify or iTunes or whatever. You'll find me if you need to.
Yeah, and I've been doing this show for, 4 years or something like that, and it's crazy that I've not had my brother on the show till now. But we've got multiple excuses, both to have him on the show and for not having had him on the show so far. But most recently, well, Sherry, you take it away with the first question.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess the name of the song that you did is, tell me again, I forget. I forgot to
Repentance Song.
Repentance Song, yes.
Song.
And
can I just preface that? That's with that was in Zanza. It was in collaboration with Lee Scratch Perry, the godfather of dub music.
Right.
That is the big news.
Preface that because we didn't say that at the beginning. But that's
and he's
I was building
a
up
big
to
deal.
Yeah, he is a big deal. Basically, he is like underground, one of these underground people who changed the course of music history. People know if you talk about Elvis Presley or the Beatles or Michael Jackson, these people changed music history. But people don't realize that Lee Scratch Perry changed music history just as much as any of these people did, because he's a bit of an unsung hero. He's known in his niche, but he, phenomenal.
Right. He's like a Quincy Jones of reggae, right? Dubstep.
Absolutely.
So can you unpack that a little bit? Can you tell us how Lee Scratch Perry changed the course of history?
Well, he was credited with a few things, including he was the first person to change the mixing desk. As far as we know, the first person to change the mixing desk into an instrument. So if you've got your guitars and microphones and whatever instruments, they're plugged into your mixing desk, you can start adding effects on that mixing desk. Traditionally speaking, people would just set those effects in their graphic EQ or whatever EQ they've got, and they just leave it static. But Lee Scratch Perry started playing around with those. So you could record your songs, you could then send out each of the individual channels to your mixing desk and re-record those into your tape spools. But in that process, he would be playing around with the effects and equalizers and just create these completely new ways of using delays and reverbs and filters, which is a form of equalization. So any of the dance music, for example, that you listen to today, or any of the popular music that's incorporated elements of electronic music where they're using echoes and reverbs in funny ways, that all came from Lee Scratch Perry.
I guess it really goes to show the compilation or the collaboration of the producer and the artist. And it really is its own art form, music production, like you're talking about the dubstep. It's a whole other
Dub,
thing.
sorry, it's dub. It's not dubstep.
Dubs, yeah, right? Not
So,
sorry.
yeah, no, people get confused. It's funny. People don't. I was writing to some bloggers to see if I could get some reviews, and I said it's dub music, and I guess some of the young bloggers said no, it's not. It's just like slow reggae, and like slow reggae is dub music. But they
Right.
thought it was maybe dubstep. But no, I should point out in case some other listeners are
Sure.
wondering what the difference is. That's the
Yeah.
difference.
Right. Yeah,
Well,
dub's a lot older than dubstep.
Right.
we mean to provide an educational show here,
We do.
so we're definitely receiving that. And
When did you start that?
well, do you know what? After like tuning into Postcards from Somalia with you, I felt like the average IQ of the libertarian community was rapidly falling, and I had to somehow compensate.
We're giving the market what they want or what they need,
Excellent.
regardless of whether they want it.
You're much more astute than me. If I had that idea, then we might have more subscribers. So, yeah, I guess one of the things I want to ask you is, what do you think makes a really great tune? Like, what makes a good song?
I'm not the best person to ask.
In your
because-
opinion,
Yeah.
what
So,
what really draws you to a song?
let's say it's not necessarily one thing. It can be a particular element. I mean, there's obviously special songs where the individual elements come together in such an incredible way, and a lot of times there's never ever a song like that again. But I find it very difficult to have a conversation with someone if there's music playing in the
Oh,
background,
wow.
because I literally am dissecting everything. So I'm trying to have a conversation with you, either of you or both of you. If there was music on in the background, my mind would be going, oh, those drums now, what space was that recorded in? And how close were the microphones to the drums? And the very, very last thing I listen to is the lyrics. I can listen to a song over and over again and not even be able to tell you what any of the lyrics are, because it's just the way my mind works. I like to deconstruct music, because if I deconstruct it, then I can start figuring out how to construct it when I'm doing something myself.
Amazing. I should just mention for everyone, like, Jonathan's a multi-instrumentalist. Guitar, bass, drums, keyboards, but in addition to that,
Oh, the audio's gone dead.
We lost you, Antony.
We've lost your audio, Antony. No, he can't hear us either.
He's just going and going.
Just let's wave at him.
Him.
Sherry, I want to talk to you, because we can't hear Antony at all.
Yeah, let's keep him out of the
keep him out.
conversation. I love that. So while he's fixing that, I do have a question for you. What do you think, do you think that the influence of reggae has been underestimated in pop music? Because I mean, you hear like with the Police, the Clash, say Paul Simon, even like a lot of different people have really taken on a reggae sound a lot of times, but I don't think people really understand the huge impact that reggae had on popular music.
It's been enormous. I mean, again, the Clash got into reggae because Lee Scratch Perry started producing them, but everyone's heard of Bob Marley as well, you know?
Yeah, of course.
Everyone's heard of Bob Marley. Everyone's heard of the Police. Everyone, I think, has heard of UB40. Were they big in the States as well?
They had that red wine hit
Right.
here, but I had that cassette, but I don't think they were very big after that.
So there's a few artists on the surface there that are very well known but everyone else is kind of niche. In terms of how reggae has influenced other music, have you ever played any musical instrument, Sherry?
I have. I used to play the clarinet
Oh yeah.
and the alto sax.
Oh wait, I
And
picked up
I've
a
picked around
soprano
on the guitar
sax.
a little bit, but
Oh nice. But you know what an offbeat is then? Because in reggae it's chick, chick, chick,
yes.
chick. So the accent was always on the offbeat, and that's basically what reggae did. And now in EDM music, you might have
Mhm.
all this offbeat stuff is happening. Um, I guess it's branched out into so many different genres. That's just one example that came into my head. Ska,
Yeah.
kind of started merging with rock, and there's all
Right.
sorts of gray areas between these different genres.
Right. And
Yeah.
is ska a precursor to reggae,
No, ska
or
came after.
it
So
came
reggae
from
came
reggae?
first, then dub, and then when these basically, Bob Marley's got this song called Punky Reggae Party.
Yeah.
That was because the Rastas and the punks had this affinity for freedom. They didn't want government control. They wanted people to be free. So the Rastas and the punks started hanging out. And after the punks and Rastas started hanging out, ska, I think, as far as I know, emerged from those kind
Okay.
of environments.
Yeah. Ska was really big here, like when the Mighty Mighty Boss Tones and
Oh
all those
yeah.
types there. So you mentioned the freedom aspect of it, and I guess Antony's not with us still. He's still
Can we hear
working.
you?
Oh,
I'm
are you
here.
there? He is there. Okay, sorry.
I
I'll
can
let
barely
you
hear
ask
him.
your next
No,
question then. I
no,
didn't want
please
to.
go ahead. I'm really enjoying.
Anthony, can you turn your microphone up though?
We'll see if that's possible. Sorry, I had a unpredicted technical disaster. Is that better, or is that exactly
Yeah,
the
that's
same?
better.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's better. I don't know. I'm kind of like having a hard time concentrating with the two Sammeroff boys with me, and like all the Scottish accent coming my way
Oh.
it's like a
Yeah.
wall of intensity there. So anyway,
You've got us in stereo, Sherry.
I know.
Stereo with
It's getting
Sammeroff.
around. Wow. Anyways, this is like the Scottish Liberty podcast with more hair today. I just want to say. Anyways, so the freedom aspects of that, with along with punk and sort of anti-establishment.
Absolutely.
A lot of rock music has that sort of, I know metal, which is something I really like, is there's a lot of really anti-authoritarianism in that. And why do you think that is? Why do you think that musicians and artists in general are drawn to sort of the anti-authoritarian ideals?
Do you know something? You're reminding me of something I really hate, Sherry, when I'm talking to people. I'm putting my point across, and they say musicians should stay out of politics.
Right.
Oh,
This is a new idea that's emerged over the last kind of 10 years, 15 years, and it came out with the news broadcasts and the skeptics. This is completely wrong. It is the obligation, that's maybe a bit of a strong word, it's an obligation of creative thinkers to pitch in about politics, because they come at it from a completely different angle. They might come at it from different angles to each other, but they come at it at a different angle from the government and government shills and your standard news broadcasters. We're only getting a very one-dimensional view of what's going on terrestrial media, and more and more it's the opposite way around. Creative thinkers, creative people need a sense of freedom to express themselves, to put into their art forms. And if you try and restrict that in any way, creative people are going to feel that.
yeah, it's like a stifling of that creative instinct. I know as an artist myself, not necessarily a musical one, but that I think you in order to see the world in that way, to create art, you see it a little differently. And so it's sort of, like you said, not really, obligation isn't the correct word, but there definitely is an idea of looking at culture and the society in which you live in a little more critically than maybe others in that society. So I think that's a really cool idea.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people feel like certain artists gave them a voice, you know, whether it's like Bob Dylan or Rage Against the Machine or something like that. When whatever it was that was being expressed, people felt like something was being said on their behalf that they could get behind, you know, going into the reggae, the Bob Marley, get up, stand up for your rights, and of course, Redemption Song, which is quite nice because it ties quite nicely into Repentance Song. And I was wondering, I guess, myself, if that was part of the reason that you called it Repentance Song, because it does put us, you know, it fits quite nicely next to it on the record shelf.
Oh, nice one. Well, yeah, I mean, basically we had this opportunity to work with Lee, and it came through our Eugene and I's mutual friend called Marco. It was Marco's idea to call it Repentance Song. We basically, after Lee had done the lyrics, he'd said repent a lot, and Marco thought it would be a great idea to call it Repentance Song. So we both agreed with that, and we also felt that, as I've already said, Lee was a bit of an unsung hero. He's still going. He's 84. He's itching to get back out and gigging. But he's in Jamaica just now, and you know. But anyway, that's an aside. Where was I going? Remind me where we were going.
With the title of the song.
Yeah, we thought Lee should have a repentance song to match Bob Marley's Redemption Song. We would have, I mean, it's performed so well amongst his fan base.
Okay.
Especially the video. It's not really broke out of that. We would have loved, not just for selfish reasons, but for the reasons that Lee was one of these original characters, for it to have broken outside of that bubble and got garnished him with a bit more of the attention that we thought he deserved, because a lot of people don't know that Lee recorded Bob's very first demos, sent them out to labels. There was a bit of a disagreement between Lee and Bob about that, because Lee didn't have Bob's permission to send these demos out to the labels. But as a result of that, you know, everyone's heard of Bob Marley. So anyway, I'm kind of getting into a wee bit of fog here. The point is, we wanted to try and help do something special for Lee. The results have been great, and maybe one day Repentance Song will be as well known as Redemption Song.
Yeah.
Well, I certainly hope so. Certainly, I hope everyone that's listening will go type it into YouTube and have a quick watch, because you spent freaking ages making this video, which people like, as well as being a multi-instrumentalist, sound engineer and producer, as if that isn't enough. Jonathan's really good with video editing and things like that, and he put a really cool music video together. So you did a show with my friend Nick Picone, and I did upload that to the Scottish Liberty podcast newsfeed. So people can go back and listen to that as well if they've not already, but many people listening will have already. But so we don't leave anything untouched. Maybe you'll want to say a little bit about how this opportunity came together and recording the music video, and then we'll maybe dive into some other topics as well.
Okay, it's a long story. I'll try. And basically, our friend Marco has been living half a year in Bamako in Mali, which is in Africa, for those that don't know. Bamako is the capital of Mali, and before, I guess, terrorists turned up a few years ago, although he thinks that was about precious stones, but that's an aside for now. Bamako was really thriving music community. They're suffering at the moment from Al-Qaeda, and they're not really worried about COVID, but the tourism's going down. Anyway, Marco had recorded this amazing African reggae drummer, and he came to Scotland with these beats, and he told Eugene and I that he'd managed to make contact with Lee's manager, and because he was doing this work in Africa, Lee was interested in collaborating on some track if we got some track to him. So Marco came with a drum beat. Eugene and I laid down the rest of the instrumentation. Marco did put in some rhythm and some lead guitar. So we put the track together. We sent it out to Lee. He loved the track. He did a few takes, I guess 3 or 4 takes. Vocals, we still hadn't met him by this point. He sent the vocals back to us, and he's just freestyling. So Lee's one of the only people, again, that has managed to make a career out of freestyling. He very rarely, apart from his 2 or 3 biggest songs, he'll never sing the same thing twice. But so this is the format. His vocals came back in. We wanted to make it into more of a song structure, so we cut those 3 or 4 takes up and made a little story, and then we added in our chorus vocals based around what he'd been freestyling about. We spent hundreds and hundreds of hours on this track because we knew it was a special thing that had landed in our laps just by chance, basically, and we wanted to do something special with it. So we finished the track, and then we were talking to Lee's manager, who's also his wife, asking about the potential to get together to make a video, because Lee was on tours in the UK, did tour in the UK quite a lot, and all over the place. But we were trying to see if we could meet up at some point during his tour. So we're in Glasgow in Scotland. I guess most listeners, I don't know where most of your listeners are from, but Lee had a day off in a place called Brighton, which is right on the south coast of England. So that would have been an 8-hour drive or something like that. So we drove down through the night, turned up at the hotel. We didn't know what time Lee was going to be turning up. And we scouted the area for locations. We spoke to the hotel about hiring out a function room because we weren't sure if we'd be able to take Lee outside. He's quite a big deal in Brighton, because one of these arty places, everyone knows who he is. Eventually, basically, Lee got there. He can't go outside, so we hire out this room. And for 2 hours, and basically for an hour and a half, we meet Lee. He comes in. We're really excited. And it's kind of like we're jumping around with cameras. We know from the things we've seen about Lee that you can't really tell him what to do. He's a total freestyler. For the first hour and a half, he's just doing these rituals. So that involves like drawing things, candles, water, and Eugene had brought down this little red box. We didn't know what was going to happen with it. We just knew that it was this quirky thing and Lee was going to like it. So as Lee's like drawing on the ground, you'll see in the video, if you look up Zanza and Lee Scratch Perry Repentance song, there's scenes where he's just drawing on the ground, and as he's doing it, like Eugene's just kicking the box little by little, slowly towards him. Eventually he picks it up and starts playing with it, and he notices right away that as soon as you touch it, like the light starts flashing. So he loved that. He starts playing with the box, and we're in a panic, just running around him trying to make sure we get everything right. And after an hour and a half, he sits down in this chair between these plants that we've laid out for him. It looks like a throne, and he holds up this lighter and he lights it, and it was like boom, the end of the ritual. And Eugene and I both start shouting, "Oh my God, I can't believe it. That's amazing," because it was an incredible energy, like something special happened. We're thinking we've hired this place out for 2 hours and we're not even going to get the shots we want, but amazing. So after this ritual, Eugene kind of had definitely bonded with him more than I had, and went up to him and said, "Hey Lee, would you just mind passing us the box?" And because we didn't know what the box was going to turn into, as I said, but we knew he wanted them to pass us this box. So he said, "Yes, that's the box." I better not do impressions, but because I'm rubbish at it. But he passed the box, and he's sitting in this chair. We're sat like alongside the chair, and he passes the box. Now, you can't hear this in the video because the song's playing. He goes, "I now present to you the box of whatever he called the box," and he gave us the box, and we're like, "Oh my God," like acting up a bit. It turns out one of the cameras wasn't running properly, so Eugene said, "Lee, would you mind just doing that again, please?" A little bit sheepishly, he says, "Yeah, I'll do it again." And he's like, even more the second time, he was loving it. "I now pass you the box of blah, 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 blah," and like gives us his box, and that was great. So basically the box then became a character. We wanted to tell the story. It started in Bamako, Mali. We're from Glasgow. Eugene lives just down the road in a village called Broughton. Marco also lives half the year in Bobbia in Italy. Lee's from Jamaica. He now lives in Switzerland. Like all these locations, we were chasing the box. So that's how all these locations were chosen. It was based on the actual real story of where this song came from. And without giving it any spoilers, the music video is kind of like a short superhero story. And this box is carrying the powers that is bestowed upon, well, you'll need to watch it to figure out,
Exactly.
see who these powers are bestowed upon and what those powers are.
Very wonderful. Now, one of the things you said about recording your vocals, you and Eugene put down the chorus vocals, and you said that the way that you wrote the vocal melody and the words were completely different from how you've ever done that before, and I thought that was quite interesting. Can you tell us about that?
Sure. It was all about phonetics. So we knew what the message was. We wanted every syllable to flow into the next syllable very naturally. So, sometimes you're trying to say a phrase and it's even just a tiny bit of a tongue twister and it doesn't flow. We wanted it like the phonetics to be so simple that like maybe a 4-year-old or 5-year-old could say them, even if they didn't know what it meant. So it was all about the phonetics. We've never written lyrics for the phonetics before. It's even changing a word like before to previously, that's a huge difference. That's just a really simple example. But it was all like that. There was also keywords. We knew we wanted water. We wanted something to do with water, something to do with fire, something to do with Babylon and Zion. From reggae music and the Rastafarian culture, Babylon is the kingdom of slavery and Zion is the kingdom of freedom. Basically.
And I think your phonetics worked because it is like, if I ever hear your tune, I always have the chorus running in my head and repeat for days afterwards. But
Nice.
It's not one of those things where it's like, oh, it's so annoying, I can't get that tune out of my head. It's like I'm grooving to it when I'm walking down the street.
A good lyric does that, right?
Yeah.
Like it inspires that in your head, sort of this like sunesis of, a high that you get from your brain, which is pretty cool. Do you think that like the ideas, that come from, of course, the Rastafarian religion but have to do with the colonialism and of the islands? I've noticed, it seems in mine, this may be just anecdotal, but being in the States, that there seems to be a much greater love of reggae in Britain. I know that there's still a lot of reggae here, but there seems to be a particular connection with that. And I wonder if that's sort of the history intertwined with British colonialism.
I don't know. I mean, I know that it was Island Records that signed Bob Marley, and who's obviously the biggest reggae star of all time. And they were based in London. I guess a lot of the, as you mentioned already, a lot of the English punk bands started fusing elements of reggae. So I don't know exactly.
It seems to me that like reggae is probably the best example of why cultural appropriation, in my mind anyways, is a bunch of tripe, because you know, that's you wouldn't have reggae if you didn't have this merging of cultures and borrowing from each other, and sort of to create this whole new thing that's even, you know, this amazing new art form that has been so transformative. So I don't know, that's my opinion of it. But
well, I don't really know the history of Jamaica too much outside of what I've seen in relation to reggae music. You know, I know Bob Marley tried to get politicians together, and he put the two parties in a very awkward situation one time when he would invited them both up on stage and basically forced them to shake hands, you know, because the conflict between the two sides in the UK might lead to a few nasty words, but in Jamaica it was leading to gun violence.
Yeah.
So that's all I really know about it.
Hence the popularity of the term unity in Jamaican music.
I'm always on the cynical side. You know, if I imagine in Jamaica there's two parties that are opposing each other, or any other country that's been colonized. In fact, the whole world's been colonized now, let's face it. The whole world's been colonized by this left-wing, right-wing system, okay? And normally one side of this has grown out of the country itself, and the other side's been brought in by the Commonwealth or some sort of other international body, and that seems to escalate conflict. It brings in new ideas, new systems, new structures that don't necessarily suit cultures. You know what I mean? If you look at any traditional native culture that has been integrated into a Commonwealth system. Now, as soon as, let's take the Australian situation, I'm not even going to use the word Aboriginal because Aboriginal means unoriginal, but the native people of Australia, they used to walk across the country. This was part of their ritual. I'm not saying they walked across the entire thing. It was called, what was it called again?
Walkabout.
Now, and this was to achieve some sort of dream trance state as part of their ritual. As soon as you fence off an area, you say, right, this is a reservation, this is your area, you cut off the soul of that culture. As soon as you take that freedom of movement away. So what's it going to be like if you bring in this kind of structure? How are you going to see what the culture is really like if you've cut them off from their souls?
Interesting.
So, anyway, I don't know how I got into that. Apologies.
No, but that's good because that's good. You're going walkabout with your. So
I think.
Go on, Sherry.
No, I was just going to say, I think what you're speaking to a lot is the idea that, you know, the left and right, whereas that is it's a useful way to explain different people's ideas sometimes, but often it's just the actual idea that there's a power and that these two sides are vying for it, but they both want to control people, and that whether they're going to control them in one way or another doesn't really matter. It all cuts off the individual's ability to you know, converge and be together and figure things out in their own way in whatever location they happen to be in. So I think that's really true, that all that kind of outside influence on individuals in their local areas kind of stifles people from their innovation and ingenuity.
I mean, I'm a hunter-gatherer. All of a sudden, I need to choose between these two different things. Anthony, can you close the door, man? I can hear shit going on.
Sorry.
All of a sudden, you've got...
How do you like it?
I know what's going on.
I know.
Let's not talk about that.
No,
but
we don't talk about
you've got
that.
a hunter-gatherer. All of a sudden, they've got to choose between two things that they never had to choose between before. And they've not got any other choice except to choose between these two parties. Okay, there might be a third or fourth little party, but they're still it's still part of this new structure that's been superimposed over the surface of the land.
What they disagree on is what they choose to define the debate by, whereas largely whichever of the main parties you vote for, all of the really consequential stuff, whether it was the foreign invasions or the bailouts, or you name it, they agree fundamentally on on their basic principles.
Right.
And I think the left thing, right wing thing, I'm not going to say those distinctions are completely useless. They're not completely useless, but it's a way of like labeling, oh, that's right wing, or oh, that's just some lefty bullshit. Like you can label something, and then people have to decide whether they're for or against it without a careful consideration.
Right. They can dismiss it once it has a
Yeah,
label. They
exactly.
can sort of just dismiss it.
So can you say a little bit about your politics, and like how would you describe yourself, and what's your journey from the politics you used to have to the politics you have now?
I basically used to have no politics. I didn't want to think about it, didn't want to talk about it. I cared about injustice. I started getting into hallucinogenic drugs a little bit. That put me on a spiritual path. And I guess at some point I got into this free man in the land, which is also sovereign citizen philosophy. I indulged myself in that for a good 18 months or 2 years. Just that's all I wanted to consume, and basically came out, I guess, what you'd call a minarchist. I think my main gripe with the system as it stands is that the police, and this is all over the world, the police and the court system have been usurped by the government. Okay, these are supposed to be separate departments. So whatever politics you call this, you know, a government party, a politician has no more right to give a policeman an order than a citizen does, than an individual does. Don't even know if I want to use the word citizen. Some people know what I'm talking about. The court system here, I'm not sure what it's like in the States there, Sherry, but basically they've created this tribunal system. So the tribunal system is for when a citizen has a disagreement with the government, but the whole thing is set up to remove the presumption of innocence, okay? And the tribunal system, it's assumed from the get-go that the government is right. So that means if there's some sort of statute that's passed and the department that that statute relates to has adhered to that statute, even in cases where the circumstances that that statute creates are entirely unfair and unjust, it doesn't matter as long as they've followed the thing, the conditions that are laid out to them by that statute, by that act. The government are in the right. So I can't go in arguing, well, that statute's unfair because A, B, C, D, right? So this is because the government has usurped the court system. The court system is supposed to be at least separate, if not above the government. Now we've got a system where, you know, you take any of these recent wars that have been happening, where the courts have, the high courts have looked at them. It's kind of like the high courts kind of need to ask the government if it's okay that they look at these illegal wars to see what's going on.
Yeah. And
like, where the hell has this come from?
Yeah, the whole point was to have an independent judiciary. And I don't know about here. I don't know I don't even know where the term independent judiciary derives from. I don't know if it was like Enlightenment philosophers or it predates that, but I think it was definitely written into the American system.
Yes.
So people were observing this, you know, Thomas Jefferson or whatever, and going, hey, that sounds like a pretty bloody good idea, actually. We should have an independent judiciary.
Well, even prior to it being put on writing, I mean, you'd basically have smaller versions of that same thing, right? You wouldn't have some sort of special body to convene a judiciary. Small communities would rely on the people that they respected. Okay, sometimes there were many dictators. I can't say that didn't happen, but essentially it was a locally run thing. It wasn't run by this overarching government that then can start writing laws that the courts have to obey.
Right. It's always better when you have someone that if you're in a community and you're going to, say, deal out justice to an individual who's transgressed the community in some way, it's always better to have someone that's your neighbor that has to look you in the face and say, this is what you did or didn't do. Because as we all know, when things are removed from that, even just sitting behind a computer where you can't see someone, people are much more aggressive and vile and violent than they are when they have to be face to face. So I think that's always a good thing. And one of the things that I know is a matter of American jurisprudence anyways is jury nullification, which they definitely try to hide. And there's only one state in the country that I'm aware of, and that's New Hampshire, and it's due to the Free State Project there, that they must tell you about jury nullification before they do it. And that is what you were talking about, is where you don't just have the right to judge whether a person broke the law, because that's what the courts would like you to believe, is that you're judging them according to not whether something's morally right, but whether or not they technically broke the law. But jury nullification says you have the right as jurors to decide whether the law is just itself. You're not just judging the person, you're judging the actual law.
Right.
So that's why it's so important, jury duty. And to really have any sort of real justice, you'd have to get rid of the bail system, which is, again, it's against the presumption of innocence. If they can detain you without trying you, then and some people, I don't know about there, but here people sit in jail on bail for years at times because they can't pay to get out. So it definitely favors the wealthy. And there are so many problems with the injustice system, as we like to call it.
Yeah, and then there's
Our father. Go on, sorry.
I was just going to say, then there's the thing of plea bargains, where they basically scare
Yes.
the shit out of people by saying, if you don't plead
this.
guilty to this charge, then we're going to charge you with all these other things, and you're going to spend a long ass time in jail. So people just go, okay, I'll confess to it, even if they didn't do it. And that the reason why they do that is because then they need to spend less money taking them through court and things like that. But I think one of the things is they create a system where you could be breaking the legal codes at any time without even knowing it, and they'll do nothing to you until they fucking want to do something to you. And when they want to do something to you, they'll have plenty of excuses to.
I always like to explain it like a spider's web. The laws are a spider's web to catch you. And sometimes it doesn't get you and they don't care. But when they do care, they're going to bring everything, and they'll have it all, they have all that legislation or laws behind them in order to do it.
So Jonathan, you were going to add something.
Yeah, it's just our father. And when I don't mean our father in heaven, I mean the father of me and Antony. Was called for jury duty, and he told us that this turned my stomach. At the beginning of jury selection process, the judge was present, and the judge told the jury how he or she believed that the law should be applied. Right? This is not supposed to happen. This is the opposite of what you were talking about, Sherry. I don't know. I don't quite know the stepping stones of how the justice system has come to this. But you asked me about my politics, and that's the main thing. So whatever you'd call me now, basically I'm saying, right, a government should not be able to make laws for the court and the police, right? Mm-hmm. The police make their own rules, and it's up to the courts to decide if the police have overstepped the mark. That would be the natural system to evolve from where we've come from. Somehow, some sort of malicious interface has been put into that system where the governments now make laws that the courts and the police have to follow.
And not only that, but everyone tends to think that's legitimate. I mean, what else would you have government for other than to pass laws?
Yeah.
It's centralized power. Centralized power always, it gives people something to vie for, to control other people that they don't like.
And the more the government is allowed to make laws, the more is at stake when you go out and vote. And everyone hates each other because everyone is trying to force their way of life through the government onto everyone else. the more of a role the government has to play in making laws, you know. I think people mostly agree on the big ones, you know. Is at the risk of sounding cliched, you know, don't hit people, don't take their stuff, and you know, don't defraud or you know, people, or you know, you know, they see in the Bible they say bear false witness, which is different from lying. It's like, you know, these are the things that pretty much most people agree are harmful. You don't really need reams and reams and reams of legislation to get a court or police force that's going to enforce those.
It's any laws, like the whole legal code is, you need lawyers because it's very difficult, and it's all these technicalities, and the words mean something very specific. And so any law that stems from a natural law should be very simple. It shouldn't be that difficult. And then you should only need judges to step in when it's a little more nuanced, or there needs to be some sort of, you know, directive for someone to do something. But yeah, it should all be very, very simple, but it's convoluted for a reason. That's to make it inaccessible.
Well, yeah, that whole legalese thing, that they basically wrote another language that looks like English, it's not English, and then they need to employ translators to interpret it. But I can't think of any examples right now, but I know when I was, you know, really studying laws, and I was reading laws, some laws, reading statutes. Obviously there's thousands upon thousands upon thousands of them, and there was I could have maybe a couple of years ago literally run off examples for you of two statutes that contradict each other directly, and you've got so many, there were so many examples of this. I wish I could think of one right now. And basically it's at a policeman's discretion which if they want to apply one law or the other or not. And there's these things here called bylaws, which can be applied or not at discretion. I would love to see a political party run on, you know, so many of these statutes are ridiculous and convoluted. We're going to remove 25% of these statutes. We're going to free up a whole bunch of money, and we're going to make your life more fruitful, more free.
Yeah. But the thing is, Jonathan, you just want tons of deregulation so that big capitalists will be able to abuse people and do whatever they want. That's all you want. You're just a paid shell of the bourgeoisie. That's all this is.
Is that my politics then?
Yeah. It's interesting you mentioned earlier, Antony, that you know, people believe this. They do believe the basics of don't hurt people, don't take their stuff. If you ask them in that way, if you ask them, you know, is it okay? Do you think people should be left alone to live their lives and, you know, uninhibited by government? They will agree with that. But then when you take it from that basic principle to, well, do you think people should be able to, say, smoke cannabis? Oh, well, no, I think it's very bad. And then they do want to. So it's not about the simplicity of it. It's about, well, I don't like this. Yeah. So, you know, they get bogged down in issues. And I think that's where people like us are really good and needed, because we bring people back to that. Well, you still don't, you might not like it, but you don't have a right to stop it. Right. That sort of, because they get confused by the issues when you don't have principles to stake yourself to.
Of course, many years ago, people thought that marijuana smokers, as a result of the media are the worst culprits at the moment, as far as I'm concerned. But as a result of the media, the people thought marijuana smokers were like what heroin users are today. They thought if you let people use marijuana, then there's going to be more break-ins and people are going to be robbed and burgled. And
it really comes from racism too, like they're going to rape the white women, you know, reefer madness, that sort of thing.
Okay, yeah.
In this country anyways.
And yeah. I think one of the things is this monolithic centralization of power in the state where they write the laws. One of the things is people don't like competition, but the fact is it forces efficiency on entrepreneurs. So if Sherry manufactures the red widget and I manufacture the blue widget, and then Jonathan comes along and manufactures the purple widget, which mixes the best features of them both. We don't have a choice but to keep up, right? So the same with legal systems or systems of law. If you had this more decentralized thing, certain places and certain people would write the law better and more simply than other places. But because there is no like process of sieving out inefficiency when you have a monolithic system, it's like it just gets worse and worse. And you know what, it shouldn't be a matter of pride that the number of laws on the books increases every year. If anything, it should be like, wow, you know, we really simplified that that big massive 10,000 pages of laws down to just 500 pages. Yeah, we've sure done a good job. It would, and if there was this more organic bottom up approach, I think that sort of thing would be unavoidable, you know, just floating that out there.
Yeah. You're reminding me of when we talked about patents the other week.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Tell a story. Do you want to say anything about your innovation?
Yeah, I don't want to mention the F word.
Right.
You know what I mean? The company. But I'm basically designing a guitar pedal at the moment.
You certainly are a polymath.
So, and my plan is to shop this. So I've got a whole bunch of unique features in there that have never been seen before for this particular kind of device. And I know
Before you go on, I just want to mention to everyone, like, one of the things that Jonathan does is he goes touring, playing as a solo musician, but he's got all this technology. Like, he made this pedal board, he uses a loop station like some people do, but and he's got a little synth, and so he can build up a whole soundscape, and he can like double track his voice, so he gets harmonies in there while he's playing live. And that's I presume is how you learned. You knew what was needed in an excellent pedal station because you live it.
Yeah. Go look up Jono Teenage Dirtbag cover. That's probably the most popular one to see what that's about. But yeah, basically these devices enable one person to record things, as you said, and build up backing tracks actually live. We're not talking about pre-recorded backing tracks. So so the device I'm designing is along these kind of lines, and I know that the trademark and the patent or patent, however you say, office are the same office because I've bought a couple of trademarks before. Now these unique features might be patentable, might not be patentable. But Antony and I were going for a walk in the park the other day, and we're talking about this situation and what would happen, right? So let's say I take one of these features that I've designed and I try and lodge a patent for this feature. So at this point, I can't remember if it's 30 days or 60 days or 6 months, whatever it is, there's a certain window where this patent application is public. That's so that anyone that has an objection can say, oh no, well, you can't patent this because we believe we've done something like this, or they'll come up with something like, so basically, I'm one person funding myself, designing this product. I lodge a patent. Now one of the big pedal manufacturers sees this and they hire a lawyer, or they may have a team of lawyers, because a lot of these pedal manufacturers are actually under the umbrella of a bigger corporation. They've got a team of lawyers, let's say, who try and challenge this patent. Now, if that didn't happen, it would just go through. I pay a few £100 or a few $100. All of a sudden, I need to get a lawyer to argue with their lawyer in front of the patent office about whether this patent should go through. I can't afford that.
Right.
And then they have your ideas as well.
Yes.
They have the idea as well. But when I was talking to Antony about this, he was saying that people seem to think patents are good for the little man.
Yes. I was saying one of the main reasons why people argue for patents is specifically, well, you know, what if some little inventor comes up with something and then a big corporation just comes in and copies it? It's not fair. They just like stole the little guy's idea. But the system itself, rather than privilege the little guy, is actually privileging the corporation because they've got the power to fight this legal war. Not only that, they're obliging you to make your technology open source. When you lodge it with the patent office, anyone can see the work that you've created and copy it. Whereas if they couldn't, if you were working in a clandestine way, then they'd have to reverse engineer the technology themselves. They wouldn't just be able to copy it right out. I know in some fields rather than others, that's easy sometimes to reverse engineer something. And if it's a medication, that might take 2 or 3 years to reverse engineer. It just really depends. So that was something that I wish we'd had a conversation before our conversation with Stephen Kinsella, because I could have chucked that in. But that was definitely very interesting to me.
Well, this is another example, okay, of government usurping the court system. The governments have created this whole system of trademarks and patents, right? I'm sure it's generating a lot of wages for a lot of extra bureaucrats that were not needed before, right? I steal an idea from you, right? Now I go in front of a judge and jury. Why do we need a patent and trademark law to decide if I really have actually stolen something?
Yeah. I was a pioneer. They stole my idea. we used to have an idea for a song that went like that. That's why no one else is in on the joke.
With the robot voice, I was a
the
pioneer.
They stole my idea. If anyone wants the lyrics that I wrote for it, I'll post them up for you.
But don't steal them.
Yeah. But if you do steal them, at least make it into a good song, right? Don't make it shite.
Please patent my voice.
It's really, it has, what you're talking about though, it has been sold to people as a protection for the little guys. I was just talking with this man I date. He's a musician and his, you know, relies on
you're dating
royalty.
someone else, Sherry? This is the first I've heard. Heartbroken live on air. What the fuck?
You're so far away. What can I say? Mama has needs, okay? Yeah, it's really very difficult. And I used to be a photographer. Still am amateur now, but you know, it's very difficult for people to understand that a lot of these laws are not really to protect the little guy, like you said. It's like with environmental laws. People think, oh, they're going to protect the environment. Not really. They're telling the corporations and their cronies how much they can pollute.
Yeah.
That's what they're telling them. It's like, you can do this much bad before we'll jump on you.
As long as you give us this payoff, you know, to get your little license to pollute.
So it's sort of the same thing.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
So, anything else you'd like to add before we start to wrap up the show? It can be as random as you want.
Do we have to start? Well, I don't feel I've spoken to Sherry enough. I don't really know what's going on. Like when I was talking about the tribunal system, I don't know. I'd be interested to know if you use that word in the States. Do you have a tribunal system?
I think they only refer to tribunals as far as the military goes.
Okay.
That's the tribunal system that
okay.
I'm not that familiar, but that's the only instance I've really heard it called that.
Okay.
So I don't know if it's different.
Here we've got a tribunal system for like small things like parking tickets, you know, or dropping litter, you know. So let's say you get a fine. It's basically for these fines, small fines that are issued. If you want to, they use the word appeal against that, you need to go into you don't go to court, you go to the tribunal system. And this is the government's own internal system. I actually had something really, really interesting. I had an interesting conversation with a member of parliament for the constituency next door in regards to parking fines. And so the constituency where I live, the area where I live, is called East Renfrewshire Council. Okay. And then if you get a parking fine, that's issued by East Renfrewshire Council parking enforcement. Okay, so this MP basically said to me, if I set up a hearing on the phone, I wish I was recording it because I can't believe she told me this. I'd already suspected it from the Freeman Sovereign stuff. But she said to me, look, if I open a hairdresser's and I call that hairdressers East Renfrewshire Council hairdressers, that doesn't mean that that hairdressers has anything to do with East Renfrewshire Council. And I paused and says, you know, I can't believe you're saying this to me.
Nope.
It is, that's the way it is. She's basically saying that we have a private system masquerading as a government system, okay?
Right.
Which I believe all governments are corporations nowadays, essentially anyway, are crony corporations, let's say. So then I spoke to another councillor in my constituency. I called up the office and I was speaking to him about the situation with parking, because I've got a parking situation I won't get into. But basically, I'm told I can't use my own land, right? So I spoke to this other government councillor down the road about the situation, and he said parking in East Renfrewshire has been decriminalised. Okay. I said, oh, so does that mean it's now a civil matter? He said, yes. I said, so does that mean East Renfrewshire Council parking is a private entity? And he goes, oh, well, all I can say is that everyone that works for East Renfrewshire Council parking has been hired by East Renfrewshire Council.
Yeah, it sounds a little shady. It's the same. It's sort of the blurring of the lines between government and business. We have that here in the fines system. So if you go, you get a fine, you go and it's more than you can pay. The fines aren't paid to the local government. They're paid to a company that is paid by or hired by the government to collect the fines.
Yep.
So when I read an article and watched this video of this older poor woman, she had like a $500 fine or something. It was too much. She couldn't pay it at once. So every time she went to pay the fine, so much of it went to the company, because of course government isn't paying them. It went to the company for just the fact that they were collecting it. And she ended up over time, because it kept accruing and she kept getting more added to it because she couldn't pay it off, that this $500 fine turned into thousands of dollars. Like it's a way to fleece people. It really is terrible. And there's so much of that. I mean, the whole licensure system here, I don't know how licensure, I'm sure they have licenses in your part of the world, but here the licensure system grew out of being, keeping minorities from entering the workforce and competing with whites. That's what it started as. So, a lot of people don't know the history of these things and how they really go to hurt people, not to help them. And they become institutions after a while, and people just accept it. And they accept that these people they get a fine and they pay it and then it's done. And that's absolutely not how it works.
I just wanted to know what happens in the States if you get a fine and you think that for some reason it was issued incorrectly or issued unfairly.
It depends. I guess it depends. So the police officer can write you a ticket, and I'm not quite sure how it may work. If the judge orders the fine, or if there's a fine associated with the ticket.
Okay.
Like for traffic stops, say traffic tickets, you can go and you can you get a court date when you get your you get a court date when you go and call them to get it, and then you can show up, and a lot of times they're dismissed if you show up because the cop doesn't show up. But I'm not quite sure how that goes with fines. I've never had one. So
here the cop, in this case East Renfrewshire Council, doesn't need to. I guess that's a slight difference. But I was curious.
I'm sorry.
So here in the UK, the cop, or in this case East Renfrewshire Council, doesn't need to show up.
Okay.
They don't even need to.
No. Yeah. It's just assumed that they're correct. You need to prove that they're wrong.
Oh.
Yeah.
Right.
Proven negative.
Yeah.
Right.
Sounds like civil
Anyways,
asset forfeiture.
I guess that wasn't really much of a random thought, because Anthony asked me if I had some sort of random thing I wanted to bring up before we closed.
Or not random. I just
Well,
wanted to know if you wanted to add anything. It was random.
I'm just
You just wanted to
actually
talk to me, that's all.
exactly. I'm just trying to lengthen the conversation.
Okay. Yeah. Is that your flirting technique with Sherry to talk about I think you're just saying, like, you know, her parking's fine. Anyway, that's pretty tenuous.
Sherry can park anywhere she likes.
I know.
Thanks.
And
I'll back it up.
talking about fine, she is.
Wow.
I think it's Sherry. We're getting a little bit of friendly brotherhood competition
Yeah,
here. I think that's what's
I'm
going
I'm
on.
catnip to the
We're
Sammeroff boys.
offer market competition
Yeah.
and on the Scottish Liberty podcast.
Isn't that how it works? I mean,
so on that cheerful note, find Jonathan, meandmyguitar.com. You can check out Repentant Song.
Yeah, check out zanzajams.com as well.
zanzajams.com. Repentant Song, great to watch it on YouTube because you can watch the excellent video that my brother spent forever editing. So don't be that guy. Don't make that work go to waste. Why would you do that to him? You'd have to be a horrible human being not to watch the Zanza video. Share the show with your friends, your music-loving friends. And until next time, yeah, enjoy whatever stage of reverse lockdown you're enjoying. And also a special thank you to Sherry for co-hosting this week.
Thanks so much, Sherry.
thank you. It was great. Thanks for having me. It was always fun to hang out with you.
Always fun to hang out.